So my role is BU head, nothing to do with software licenses. And software license is again not a technology topic, so nothing to do with this particular conference. So it's how cool it can be for a topic which is done by completely a different person. But anyway, let's see. So how many of you know what is this one? I don't even know how to pronounce this one, but definitely not something you think. There are no space between I and A, so it's not something you think, right? It stands for like, I'm not a lawyer, right? Obviously, I'm not a lawyer. So this topic is a legal topic, but I'm not a lawyer. But when I was small, my father took my horoscope to an astrologer, right? And the astrologer said, I will be a criminal lawyer, apparently. I don't know what that astrologer is doing now, but I mean, in the morning, Sanju said like, bullshitting is a skill, right? So when you are bullshitting, you have to bullshit with the details, like criminal lawyer, so that it's like more convincing. So my topics are going to be very specific, so that you will identify the bullshitting, right? But some of the slides are actually made by Tanya from legal. In one of the sessions we did outside the organization, so those should be legally accurate, but let's see. So before we go into the software license, I want to cover two topics. One is about copyright, and then the other one is patent. So copyright is like every work you are doing, it will be copyrightable. It's by default, it's copyrighted, right? So like if you write a recipe, if you take a photo, if you create a picture, everything is like copyrighted. You would have noticed in our source file, we have like copyrighted to WSO2, etc. Generally, you don't need to put that. That what you are putting there is for people to figure out, or people to understand that you basically whom to reach out in case of any of the copyrighted problem. But other than that, you don't need to explicitly assert the copyright, right? And the owner of the copyright has the right to even reproduce a work, distribute a work, and create derivative work, blah, blah stuff, etc., right? Then the patent is about, it's similar to copyright, but then it's specifically about methodologies and like specific approaches, like algorithms and processes. And that has to be like invention. Generally, it needs to be novelty, non-obviousness, and utility. Like you can't patent how to cut hair, right? There are nothing novel, or there are nothing easy. And utility means you can't patent like creating a time machine. Nobody, I mean, how can you patent it when that doesn't have, I mean, that doesn't work, etc., right? So then, so when you write a piece of code, it's automatically copyrighted, but it may be patentable because you might have invented a new algorithm, or you might violate somebody else's patent who would have patented that particular the algorithm, and you are violating that particular one, right? So you have to be careful on that. So then comes to the license. That is the main topic of this particular session, right? So license is about someone holding a copyright, allowing other people to use that copyrighted material, and copyrighted as well as patented material to outside other people. Like if you have a recipe, you want to give it. If you have a slide, you want to give it to somebody else. So you can create a specific license in order to provide to other people, right? So software license. So the topic is about software license. So you can create license for everything, but again, our topic is about software license. So software license is a legally binding contract between the creator of the software, the author of the software, which we call licensor, and the person who is going to use it, the licensee. So the software is a bit different because when you are buying an item, like if you buy a laptop, you own the laptop. Right? If you buy a car, you own the car. But if you buy a software, you don't own the software. You get the rights to use it. Right? That means the software, the license provides is how you can use it. Right? So it's a legal permission for you to use it. So in order to understand, there are tons of licenses available. We are not going to go into the details of each of the licenses. But when you see a license, you can analyze the license in three main categories. One is what kind of permissions they allow you to do. Like some examples are whether you can modify the source code, whether you can see the source code. Some of the license doesn't even allow you to reverse engineer the source code, reverse engineer the binary, etc. So what are the permissions you can do? And the second section is under which conditions you can do those particular cases. In some cases, you might have to expose your source codes. Some cases you can you can give it to other people, etc. So there are some conditions involved in using the using the software, and there are some limitations, like whether that software covers warranty. Warranty is about, okay, if it's failed, whether somebody will help to fix it, or in the case of liability, if somebody sue them when people are using the software, if they have violated some patent, somebody else, the patent holder has sued, whether the software creator will cover the particular cost, etc. So there are some limitations. So any software licenses, you can take it and analyze it in these three conditions in order to understand whether you can use the software or can't use the software. So open source licensing. So that is about software license, right? Software is about everything. So, but in WSO2 context, open source license is a subset of software license. That is what more interesting to us, right? So the open source licensing means it's an approach to license open source software. So again, there is a double quote on open source software. So you have to define what is an open source software. So generally, open source software is considered whatever the definitions given by the open source definition. First is like you have to distribute it freely, free as in not in money, but from a freedom point of view, right? Anybody has the freedom to redistribute that particular source code or particular software. And the source code is often available for people to use it. People can derive that particular work, can modify the source code and create derivative work. And integrity of the author's source code, if you modify it, basically you keep the original source code intact, but you create different versions or different derivative work by that. Then it can't be no discrimination against persons or groups. So you can't say the skin color has to be beyond this particular tone, or this particular racial group can use it, or this particular country can use it, etc. So that basically you can't discriminate against the person or particular group, and you can't discriminate against the field of endeavor. So you can't say this particular software can't be used in a war situation. You can't use it in a nuclear situation. You can't use it in a like gambling situations. So software has to be available for any industry usage. Then as part of distributing the software, the people have to distribute the licenses as well, right? And so that other people can use it. And license must not be specific to the product, right? For example, if that particular software is used in a bigger context of some other product, you can't say this software can be used only with this product and can't be used with some other product. So again, it can't restrict only to a specific product. And it must not restrict to other softwares. You can't say, if I use this software, you can't use software B and C. Again, you can't restrict any other softwares together with this particular one. Again, you should be able to allow any other softwares to be used together with this software. And license must be technology neutral. You can't say this particular license can only be used with Linux or specific hardware or specific operating system or etc., right? So these are the definitions given by open source definition, and this is whatever the softwares falling with this definition is what often considered as the open source software, right? So type of open source software, there are two types. So in the spectrum of software licenses, there is a proprietary license, which is not an open source license. That is on that extreme, which is most restrictive. And then we have copyleft and permissive. Those are the only two categories we will talk now. And then public domain, which is generally not a software license, but rather if you have an image or something, you can give under Creative Commons license, etc. It's primarily available as a given to the public. So I am not going to cover this particular one. When we talk about some of the business models, we'll talk about proprietary licenses, but primarily the topic is about copyleft and permissive, right? Those are the two copyleft. Again, you need to understand some of the history and philosophy of why the copyleft license and the permissive licenses came. So in the older days, when in the mainframe eras, etc., there are no different concept of closed source versus open source. Everything was like source is available. That is the only way you will use the software, right? You just compile it and use it. But then Microsoft, when the Microsoft and I guess Sun, etc. came, they started closing the source code. That means they provided their own hardware, they provided their own software, and if somebody wants to modify for their particular usages, you will not be able to do that. So then this particular person called Richard Stallman, you would have known with lots of beard and so on. So he started that movement called free software movement as a revolution against that particular closed sourceness, right? So like when you guys are a kid, like when we are playing with a group of people, we say like, okay, if you are going to come and participate, you bring bat, you bring ball, you bring food and water and so on. So basically there are no free riders, right? So everybody has to participate on something. So the methodology, when it is coming as a revolution against the closed sourceness, the software Richard Stallman created called GNU softwares, right? You would have known. He created lots of goodies, right? And together with the licensing, if anybody uses these particular goodies, you also have to put your goodies back into this, right? So that is what it's called viral nature. So basically, if you use this software, your software will also become that same license. So the moment they touch it, their software also will become the same license. So it's a viral nature of the license. So why it's copyleft? There is no reason for copyleft. It's a copyright. You guys understand what is copyright? What the hell is copyright, right? That is right. So this is left, so copyleft. That's how the copyleft came, right? But it doesn't have any other meaning other than that. But on the other hand, the permissive licenses were primarily created by ASF and other universities like MIT and Berkeley, etc. So if you look at Apache history, again, Apache used to stand for Apache server, right? That is how initially called, then became Apache, etc., right? ASF. Initial server, initial software they created was HTTPD, that is called Apache server, right? So these server was created by so many other people who are on various commercial organizations like IBM and Oracle and so on. Like Sanjeev will get involved in ASF, etc., when part of IBM, etc., right? So you can see the people who are participating on ASF, for example, are coming from the commercial organization. So they contribute in order to use the software in the context of a commercial context. So then that particular license they created allow them to use in a commercial context. But on the other hand, the copyleft licenses, generally you can't use it in a commercial context because the moment you touch it, your software becomes the copyleft license too. So you can't make business out of that, right? And then universities are completely different because most of the projects are like researchers and so on. Their motivation is as many people should use their software. So then the license is in a way like it's very flexible as much as possible, right? So that's how the copyleft and the permissive licenses came into the picture. So example of a copyleft license, again, GPL has multiple versions. This is just an example. As I mentioned, the license can be analyzed using three sections like permissions, conditions, and limitations. So again, you don't need to understand this. I'm just putting it, this is actually created by Tanya from the legal team, just to understand how the framework works. So in the case of GPL, the permissions you use is you can use it in any commercial use. You can distribute the software. You can modify the software. The patents which are created or which the software covers the patent, etc., can be used in this particular case without violating the patent. And people can use for their private usages, etc. With the condition, so if you are using it, the conditions are this. Under only these conditions, you can use those permissions. So you need to disclose your source code. You need to license and include the copyright notice of the original author. And same license, you can't change the license and state all the changes. And the limitations, you wouldn't get any liability. Like software owner doesn't cover any of the indemnifications or any other liability. They don't give any warranty. You have to use as it is. If something goes wrong, nobody is going to help you. Nobody is going to give you money because you are using it for free. Why should I pay if your system breaks, right? So that is the GPL version. If you look at I'll come back to this particular one. If you look at the Apache license, which is an example of a permissive, you can see the difference. Again, the commercial use, distribution, modification, patent use, private use, the permissions are similar as the GPL, but the conditions are different. Like you have to include the license and the copyright notice of the original software. You need to state the changes if you modify. But it doesn't say like you had to expose your source code. It doesn't say you had to keep the same license, etc., right? So you can change the license. You can close source your modification, etc. All of that is fine. And there are some limitations similar to the previous one. So in the case of GPL, GPL is often, we don't use GPL, but often in the case of customer discussions, they analyze all the source code licenses of the dependencies, and we get into some problems of various GPL variations. So there are three main variations. Again, each of the variation has multiple versions of the licenses, like GPL has version 1, version 2, version 3. So it's very high level. LGPL means you can link to the library without exposing your source code, etc., but you can't modify. The moment you modify the library, it becomes like a GPL, similar to what GPL is. This might not be specific for this might not make sense that much for Java programs because Java often runs on top of JVM. But if you take any of the C++ programs, native code, they use tons of shared libraries from Linux systems or Unix systems and so on. And Linux, in most cases, is GNU softwares in most cases. The libraries are under LGPL or GPL. So because of that, you have to let the people to link to that. Otherwise, nobody can use Linux, right? So that's why this particular variation of the GPL was created. The original version was GPL, which means the moment you use, you have to expose all your source codes and have to make it available. AGPL came in the case of cloud computing. So the GPL means you can use privately. So as far as you don't distribute the software, you can keep the source code close. But so that means in our internal systems, if you use GPL, it doesn't matter. It's okay because our software, we are not distributing, totally fine. But if you use it in Choreo, for example, the Choreo is exposing to outside people. You can, at one level, you can argue we are running it inside our organization. We are not distributing the software, right? But you are distributing the services. So under GPL, you don't need to open source Choreo if you use a GPL software. But under AGPL, we had to open source it. So if you have any dependency which is under AGPL, that means even though we are using it and we are not distributing the software, since we are allowing, we are letting people to use the services over the network, you have to make the source code available openly, right? So those are the variations on GPL, LGPL versus AGPL. Okay, so there are some licenses available. These are all created as part of the cloud computing after cloud computing became famous. Some of the licenses, even though they have the source code available, but doesn't fit into the open source definition. For example, MariaDB created this business source license, and recently Terraform moved to that. I don't know whether Terraform moved back to any other license. MongoDB created server-side public license, etc. These licenses, even though the source code is available, people can modify the source code. That has a limitation saying you can't run it as a cloud service. Now, you can see the open source definition say you can't restrict the usage, right? You restrict a particular usage. But in this particular case, if you say you can't run it as a cloud service, that is restricting. And in the case of Redis, I believe it says you can't compete with Redis. Even Terraform says you can't compete with Terraform's business. That is again restricting a commercial usage. So then it doesn't fall under the open source definition. So people claim, okay, again, there is a legal battle between two sides. Some people say like, okay, even if you say if you use it, you have to open the source code as GPL, if you can consider that as an open source license. If you say like you can't compete with the business model, why it can't be an open source? Because it's same restriction in both cases, right? Similar restriction. So there's a battle, but for all practical purpose, for Myrtle, like technical people, they call it as like source available licenses. Don't categorize this as an open source license. But again, this particular boundary is narrowing. If you look at the ASF web pages, some of these licenses are mentioned as part of their open source license compatibility. These are not compatible with the Apache 2 license, so you can't use it. But anyway, whether it's an open source license or source available license, it's a detail. Okay, so how are we using this particular fact in our business model? So our business model is our softwares are all Apache, is open source and Apache 2 license, right? And how do we make money? By using the subscription model. And we issue patches for the older versions, right? And like, for example, if a customer is on older version like 2.2.0 or 3.1.0, etc., and the active development might be happening here, we fix the issues when some customer reports an issue. We fixed on a particular version and front port and back port, etc. But at the same time, fix it in the active development branch. This code is under Apache 2 license, right? The license of whatever the patches we are issuing, at the moment, we use WSO2 software license version 3. We colloquially call it as EULA, but it's called version 3. That is not an open source license, right? Again, historically, we issue our patches under Apache 2 as well, right? And in one of the meetings, Amila Suryaraj, it's our batchmate, me and Aziz's batchmate, he used to work with us. He pointed out, like, if you issue the patches under Apache 2 license, like one of the partner can get it and can distribute to all other people, because Apache 2 license allow you to distribute to all other people. Then what's the business model for WSO2? So then we change the license, and now the end user license agreement or the WSO2 software license is not an open source license, it's a proprietary license, which says you have to have a valid subscription if you are using it. Right? Again, at the earlier versions, I guess version 1 of EULA or 2, the earlier versions, I guess 1, there is a slight different one versus the third one called term license versus perpetual license. So let's say we issue a license to a customer, and when they terminate the subscription, it's fine until the subscription is available, they are using this particular license. When they terminate the subscription, can they continue to use? They wouldn't get any new patches, that is understood, but all the patches they already got, whether they can continue to use. Right? There are two types of licenses. One is perpetual license, meaning if you get a license, you can continue forever. And there is a term license where the license is given for a specific period. So the current license we provide is a term license. They can use only under the subscription. And if there are no subscription, they had to remove the licenses, right? And there are some other some other open source business model as well, like open core model, where some of the features are open source, some other features are not open source. They are all open, they are under commercial licenses, like enterprise features or team concepts or security features or etc. Like MuleSoft is an open core model, not a 100% open source. Somebody can claim like our one is also open core, but generally open core means all the features are available. In our case, all the features are available, and even the fixes on the master branch, we go and fix it, right, under Apache 2. So then it is not an open core, but different variety. And another variation is a dual license. Basically, sometimes you can issue a software under two licenses. One is under commercial license, one is under open source, often a GPL, so that people can use it. It's a valid business model. People can use the software by using the GPL, but before they actually ship it with their products, they have a negotiation with the software vendor and get a commercial license allowing them to not open source their software. So that is a valid license. There is a variation of that where some of our dependencies, if you analyze our dependencies, some of the dependencies have dual license like GPL and Apache 2. And people can select whatever they are comfortable with and can use it. So those kind of usages are okay. So if you analyze, some of them might be reported as GPL, but in fact, those are dual licenses, and those are all okay. Okay, so when I talk about that's a business model, but when as an engineering team, when we are using the third-party dependencies, what are the items we need to consider? One is the license. When we take a dependency, this is why we had to analyze the license. In Apache has a great guideline saying what are the licenses are allowed in the case of ASF. Those are the safest license we can use in our products. Like category A is like Apache, BSD, and those kind of stuff. Category B, like Eclipse license, Mozilla license, etc., maybe include. So if you guys get into that particular situation, please talk to the legal team and analyze whether it is okay to include. And there are something called category X, like GPL, etc. We should not use it. But some of the usage, I mean, in our cloud services, possibly we can use GPL, but some of the usages have a problem. Like, for example, when I said, like, if you use a GPL, if you distribute the software, you need to expose your source code, and the software will become a GPL software, right? The way React works, so if you have a React application and has a GPL dependency to your React application, the way React works is the browser downloads the software. From a legal terminology, it's considered you are distributing the software, right? So if you have a React dependency, which is a GPL, in your cloud system, your entire cloud system will become a GPL, right? So then you have to be very careful on those particular situations. And then obviously vendor login and potential license change. Again, the license software, often the software is created by different kinds of people. One is the university. Generally, very rarely, they will change the license. The organization like ASF, Eclipse Foundation, CNCF, very rarely they will change the license, right? And there are some commercial organization which generates open source software, like React is coming from Facebook. I guess there are the like LinkedIn created some other open source projects, etc. Those are also very unlikely they will change. But the commercial organization which are creating software like HashiCorp or Redis or MongoDB, etc., they have in fact changed their licenses in the middle. So if you are taking any dependency on those kind of vendors, you need to be careful, right? And community support versus commercial support, Aziz talked about how hard it is to support the cloud system. Again, sometimes we might want to get a commercial support for some of the dependencies. So that, again, something we need to analyze, right? So this is how you have to evaluate when you are consuming the open source, etc. I guess that's all I wanted to cover. And